The Thriving Pet Expo is what we're doing an extra. We're doing some bonuses for you. I know I come on every week on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock, but on Mondays, leading all the way up to the Thriving Pet Expo, I'm going to be introducing you to some of the amazing speakers. And the expo is in the end of September, beginning of October. But I just want you to meet some of the amazing speakers. Even if you can't fly out or you're not going to be able to make it, you really are going to be so excited to meet some of the speakers that are going to be at Thriving Pet Expo. And tonight, I can't tell you how exciting it is to introduce you to Dr. Barry Sands. She is the 2022 Holistic Veterinarian well, she won the award for it. And the thing is we're always looking for holistic vets on Saving Pets and on the Spaw. Everybody's like, where's the holistic vets? Well, here I bring you the holistic pet vet of the year. So Dr. Sands, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. It is so, I'm so blessed to be here to talk to all the people that love to listen to you and all your wisdom. And I'd love to have it. I think that the show right now is going to be great, just hanging out with you and chatting up and educating a bunch of people.
Yeah. So Dr. Sands is an emergency room veterinarian. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about what she's going to be talking about at the Thriving Pet Expo, but also we want to talk to you about emergency care and what that means, because it's kind of lost its way, I think, a little bit. I think, would you agree, Dr. Sands, that what's going on in the emergency room is a little different than maybe what it was intended for?
Oh, yes, definitely. So a little, background about me. I am an emergency critical care, integrative functional medicine, holistic veterinarian. And I wear two different hats on the week, depending on which day I'm working. I'll work a chunk of my time in the ER, and then I have my holistic practice on other days. And I get a lot of my holistic clients from the ER, which is amazing for them, and me. And what I'm seeing in the emergency room is there has been a higher influx of these patients that are coming in with exacerbations of chronic diseases that are just repetitive issues. And when I feel like there's a synchronicity when these clients come in and I happen to be on shift, because they're always saying, oh my God, I can't believe it's you. And I'm so happy that we met. And I can't wait to, help my animal. So it really works out that way.
I think sometimes, if people just keep hoping for that help, they can manifest that somehow and be there when you're there. One of the things, real quick, I just want to remember everybody, this runs through two things. We're running through Saving Pets and the Spaw. And when you write stuff out, if a lot of times it comes out the Facebook user only. So if you are, and I don't know who it is. So if you're on Saving Pets watching this, just put your name in so I know a little bit about what's going on. If you're coming through the Spaw, it'll tell me your name. So, but I always feel bad because somebody wrote I made it, but I don't know who it is. So it doesn't tell us, so we don't know. But so Dr. Sands is going to be one of our speakers, like I said, at the Thriving Pet Expo in Newport Beach. But what are you going to be talking about? I know a lot about emergency, but mostly like kind of more in depth a little bit about what you're going to be touching on for us.
Yeah. I think the title of it's still morphing a little bit, but the title that I was going to create is, the things, what you didn't know that you wish you knew, secrets from the ER, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to touch upon a lot of the common things that I see that and how to prevent coming into the ER, things that you can do at home to help mitigate needing to rush into an emergency room, because there's also a lot of animals that don't need to be there, and they're there because the owner is in a panic mode and they don't understand the degree of severity or lack of it, and so they just, for lack of better words, they freak out, because they do freak out.
They do freak out.
Yeah, and then they rush in, and when I tell them, well, your animal looks really good, and whatever they're going on, they're like, oh, so I really didn't need to bring him in, huh? And I'm like, well, not necessarily. There could have been things you could have done at home and waited, but it's always safe. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And
Yeah. It's hard because what ends up happening, I've seen it with my own clients, is they rush to the emergency room and then so much money is spent at the emergency room for the diagnostics that now the stuff they need for treatment, the money's running out. And all the while, a lot of times, I'm sure you see this a lot, the diarrhea for a day or two, and then the ER will run, some ERs will run an enormous amount of diagnostics, and the cost is so expensive. And then
right.
they're like, I don't know what to do now because my bill was just $2,000. And so it's really scary. So that's why I'm so glad that this talk is going to be something that we're talking about, because I also think that what's happening is dogs that need the care are not getting the care. Are you experiencing, not that they're not getting it, but like the lines for the emergency room are out the door, and it's like, oh my gosh, what about the dog who really, really needs it?
Yeah. Well, in our practice, we will, depending on the time of the day or the day itself and how our staffing levels are and what we're able to take as influxes, we are very easy or good at discerning what's an emergency, what needs to come in. We will always take a critical patient that walks into the door, never turn anyone away. And we have criteria, if you can't breathe, if you're blue, if you're seizuring, if you're bleeding, if you're, those kind of things, if you're collapsed,
Yeah,
those will always be seen. If we have the little dog that shows up because he tore his toenail and he's barking all over the place, no, he's going to have to wait, or
yeah,
they can go to urgent care, or they could
right.
probably look on YouTube and sometimes teach you how to. But that being said, it's not easy touching dogs' toes and feet. So I get it. However, there are very critical animals that really need our attention.
I've been
So
seeing it a lot, even on, I just saw it on, I believe it was on Saving Pets. Somebody was talking about an ear infection that their dog has had. This dog's had the ear infection for a while. And now mom was in a panic, and somebody responded with, take her to the emergency room. And I said, please don't do that. Like, this dog has already had this ear infection. It can wait till tomorrow morning,
right.
because the thought of the emergency room being inundated when an animal might actually really need the care. And there's a lot going on in an emergency room situation, and to stop to look at that, even to tell them this isn't an emergency, to me is taking away from what other things could be done. So
Right. I mean, we have a little bit of, maybe in our hospital, it's a little bit different than other facilities. Um, we'll have animals just come in if we have the space. They'll show up. We'll triage them. We'll get their vitals, and then we'll put them in a house, and then the owners can leave. And then when we get to them, we call them and say, I just looked at Fluffy and blah blah blah. That being said, sometimes 8, 9, 10, 12 hours go by.
yeah,
And Fluffy spent the night at the ER, and then I pick him up at 6 a.m. when I show up, and he's already been there since 9 p.m. the
yeah,
night before, and he just had a really good night's sleep.
hopefully, right?
And we
Or
don't even charge him for boarding.
right. Oh gosh, I know. And it is, that's why, these expos and the things that we're doing are so important, because we're trying to give people peace of mind.
Yeah,
Educate yourself, come out, listen to these speakers, not just the speakers, but everybody that's there is going to be sharing ideas and things. And the more you educate yourself, the better off you're going to be in taking care of your pet. And it's important we do this, like, to your point, we were talking before this, and we were just kind of talking about, what we want to talk about and stuff. And we had said sometimes that information you get on Google is wrong, right?
yes.
Like, yeah, you can get that information, you can Google it, but I remember I posted a story about a client a long time ago. Actually, it was a patient for the doctor I work for. She called and said that her dog had a massive tumor on his head, and she was panicking, and she thought the dog had cancer. And when the dog came in and we actually looked at it, it was a tick. So can you imagine that? Like, you start Googling cancer and like all this stuff. to do
Yeah.
all this stuff, and you could have bought supplements and done all sorts of stuff. So
Right.
that's what is so great about in-person conversations and talking with people. So I'm just so blessed that you're going to be speaking again last year. I got so many last year. We did I don't think I even ever told you this. I haven't had a chance to tell you, but we did that stack, a handout of how did everybody feel about the event, what could we do different, this and that. We've got some strange stuff, I'm not going to lie. Somebody said we needed to be closer to the airport, and we were very close to the airport. But I had people loved listening to you, and I probably should have told you that sooner, but we got a lot of, like, I think people were what was the topic last year? It was
Uh,
on
it was on coherence and
the connections, right?
your
Yeah.
energy, your biofield physiology,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
quantum entanglements of biofield physiologies.
Yeah, and it was so fascinating because I've experienced it. I've seen animals get sick when their owners are sick, and it's really, really fascinating. But this year we're going to do. Um, it says, "What is the topic?" This today. I don't know if that question. Remember, I don't know who's talking, so if you want me to know your name, you have to put it in there. So, what is the topic today? We're talking about a lot of things, but we really want to talk about emergency room and the Thriving Pet Expo, why we think you guys should come out. I wanted you to meet Dr. Sands because she doesn't go on Facebook a lot. And so not a lot of people get this opportunity. And yet all over the country, they're begging for holistic veterinarians. And Dr. Sands does consults too. So Lori's put up all of her information. So I bring to you a holistic veterinarian you've been all asking for.
Yeah.
We're just talking about emergencies, like what constitutes an emergency, what what can they do at home? Just kind of a brief little thing. What can you do at home before you rush to the emergency room? Is there one thing that they could do that might help?
The first thing is to take a pause and take a breath. The very
Oh,
first thing. When
yeah.
something happens, um, take a step out of the emotional trauma, really, because there's a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainty in your life with your animal when something happens and you don't understand what's happening. So the first thing to do is to kind of just take a little step back, take a breath, pause, and look at the situation from a little bit different perspective. And there are ways, and I'm going to be talking about this at the conference, of what you can do as an owner to check certain parameters in your animal. You know, their gum colors, their heart rates, their ability to stand. I've had people say, "My dog won't get up. He can't get up," and that's why they rush him in. They pick him up, they rush him in, and then as soon as they get to the ER, the dog is bouncing all over the place. And the question is, well, is it because he's scared and it's not, maybe that, not because he can't, but he doesn't want to. It's some things could be very, very minute and tiny, and animals will limp and whine for their owners. And then as soon as they show up in the ER, they're like, nope, I'm fine. I'm fine.
I have seen that, and it happens. People don't believe it, but I have seen it where they are reacting because they know they're going to get attention from you. And I know people don't
Yeah.
think animals do that, but they do.
Yeah.
They
And I
do.
don't deny that their paw hurts. It just doesn't hurt that bad.
It just
You,
doesn't
you
hurt
know,
that.
I had a dog the other day. He came in. It was a beautiful bulldog. I mean, just a nice specimen. The guy was treating it really well. It looked really healthy, and he was 9 years old, which is an amazing feat in the first place. And he said the dog. He tripped over the dog at the park, and it was like a whole little, shenanigans going on, and so the dog came up lame in his front leg, and he was crying and moaning and just, doing a whole sad thing. And so the guy carried his dog in, and the dog shows up and he's walking all over the place. And, but I could tell that he's
Yeah.
limping. I could tell he's favoring the leg, and I'm touching it, and he's telling me it hurts around his shoulder area. And, I just said, he looks okay. Just give him some ice, and
Yeah.
I did give him some anti-inflammatories for a couple of days and some bed rest and a massage.
Yeah.
And he was
He's fine.
really great. He's like, he wasn't doing that this morning.
Yeah. I had a little Maltese one time. My groomer nicked the bottom of his pad with the clipper, just a tiny little nick. And then I put him in this front room we have. It has a window where people can actually see in there. And I kept looking in on him, and he was fine. He was jumping off the bed, and he was fine. Then the dad came to pick up, but I suspected that when he saw the dad, he would put the paw up. So I told the dad to stay off to the side and look in where the dog couldn't see him. And he saw his dog walking fine and everything. I go, he's not, there's nothing. As soon as he came out, the dog ran past his dad to the place where we give him treats. So he didn't even see his dad. He ran right past him to the treat jar and then turned around and saw his dad and put his paw up. I kid you not. His dad goes, I would never have believed that if I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And then he called me a couple of days later and said that he doesn't do it to him anymore, but every time the wife comes home, he puts his paw up. Because, you know, she's the one that's like, oh, honey.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, and that's where knowing how to feel a leg, to palpate it yourself,
Yep.
you know, to know what you're going to look for, that constitutes, you know, something wrong. And then there are things you can do at home that'll help the process. Give them, you know, 24 hours time, rest, you know, ice, elevation, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
It's important. So Diana just has a little question. She said she took her dog to the, did it say, on 6/16, she took her dog to the ER vet. They prescribed, I'm sure you can read all of the stuff that she prescribed, but she says she doesn't know if she should still be worried. It came on suddenly. She's been giving other supplements to the other dog who's not having anything. She just wants to know if you have any suggestions. I think I'm reading that she still has diarrhea. Is that, I would say, Diana, is that the concern? Is she still acting sick? Today's the 19th, so 16, 3 days.
Yeah, it looks like she's still having bloody diarrhea. It also says that she's fed a frozen raw. I don't know if she is
turning her. She's not eating. She's turning her nose up to her food, but she's not vomiting anymore. She's drinking water, but still has.
It's still not eating. I would certainly continue the Serenia if she's not eating, and I would offer her. You know, I do have clients that say I'm feeding them everything, and she won't eat anything. And I've done everything, and then I ask her, well, give me a list of your everything, and it's about 5 different things. You know, it's not everything. I said, well, have you tried? For proteins, have you tried eggs or bison or cod or shrimp or crab or, you know, she was like, no, we just been giving her chicken and turkey. And then, oh, she ate some beef. I said, well, what about lunch meat? Sometimes giving a little lunch meat will stimulate them to be interested in food again.
Yeah.
You know? So just be really creative. You know, there aren't many things that they can't eat. You know, there's only about 5 things that dogs cannot eat.
Yeah.
So everything else is fair game in a little bit to try.
Yeah, I think people forget, if you've ever had, I know for me, you know, a bout of like a flu where you're vomiting a lot, you don't want to eat after that. Your stomach muscles are all upset. Everything, your bowels can be upset. So be patient. I tell people, we want everything so quick and it to happen so fast. It says she's giving supplements to both of them. I would think maybe stop the supplements for a while.
Yeah, I would just stop. I would stop everything. And also too, depending on how bad the watery diarrhea is, if it's still constant and your dog is not drinking, then they're going to get dehydrated. And just the dehydration alone is going to cause them to feel nauseous and have a headache. And so if that's the case, where there's constant losses but nothing coming in, those are the clients that may need additional, either more subcutaneous fluids or to be hospitalized for 24 hours on IV, just to kind of get them out of that, you know, loop.
Dehydrated state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because even if she's drinking water doesn't mean that she's hydrated. If it's coming right out, right, she's still dehydrated.
Yeah, you'd have to keep up with the losses, and sometimes they just can't drink enough.
Yeah.
For them. Yeah.
Now you're getting lots of questions here. So my guy has a neurological diseases due to bony change. I don't know what that is.
Impinging, I think.
Impinging on cervical spinal cord. She's used a few things, PEMF, He still had episodes Yelps, but I recently stopped using it. He looks to be doing very well. People swear by the PM. I don't even know what that is. What is
It's
that?
pulse electromagnetic field therapy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it works really great. However, multimodal approaches to neck pain is, in my opinion, the solution. Whatever it takes to get you out of neck pain, that's what it takes. Whether it's a mix, me, if I have a dog that comes in with acute, injuries in the neck, um, I go for the pharmaceuticals, the muscle relaxers, for sure, the anti-inflammatories, um, the acupuncture, the laser, the cooler, the thermotherapy, either cold or hot, depending on what the animal wants. And things like the pulse electromagnetic fields, uh, homeopathy, Chinese herbs, like whatever, Epsom salt baths, like it just, whatever you need is, and you just pile it on.
Yeah.
And, and it works.
Tell us a little bit how you became an ER doctor, because I just like this story. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I mean, I was in private, I've been practicing for over 30 years. And I was in, after vet school, I did an internship in small animal medicine surgery. And after that, I went into private practice for 4 years. And then I decided I wanted to specialize. And I didn't know if I wanted to specialize in medicine or surgery because I really loved them both. And so I was thinking, well, what would have both medicine and surgery in the same moment? And that's the emergency room. And I was very, one of the reasons that drove me to the ER was because I was tired of dealing with skin. I was, I didn't want another itchy dog.
Yeah.
It was too much. And, the way I was treating it, it was not working. It was cyclical. It worked and then it didn't work. Steroids, antibiotics, dietary changes. I mean, I just didn't know, enough to, I didn't know any integrative medicine back then. So when I went into the ER, I didn't have any derm cases, very, very, very rarely. But then when I became certified in acupuncture and went down the road of integrative medicine, I started seeing a ton of skin cases, and I was relieved and happy with those because I would see responses and they
Yeah.
would get better, and not without effort on the part of the client and the animal, and it was a collective thing, like peeling an onion, but it helped,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was very, very satisfying.
I just love the story because it's, we never really know where our path is going to take us. But I think it's interesting to me that Dr. Sands wanted out of it because she didn't want to see another scaly, bacteria-ridden, case, because it is, I can only imagine as a doctor or whatever field you're in, if you just keep doing something and you're not getting results, you're just going to be depressed and overwhelmed and burn out and not want it. But I think it's so interesting that then Dr. Sands ends up back at the emergency room and then realizes, oh, I just was doing it wrong, and now likes to help people with skin. And, once you figured out, so it wasn't that she didn't want to do it. It's just that this just isn't working. I mean, it's got to be so frustrating. And
Well,
then,
in conventional medicine, it has limitations. It doesn't do right by chronic diseases. And for me to really embrace conventional medicine, the emergency room is the perfect place for that, because when you are hit by a car and have internal bleeding and you need a blood transfusion, or you have a fracture, I mean, you're going to need the best of what Western medicine can offer you. However, in the recovery stages, you want integrative things. We are not, our bodies were not built to be like antibiotic deficient. I don't have an antibiotic deficiency. I don't need to put that in my system to make it complete. And there are so many animals that are med for lifers, and they're on chronic pharmaceuticals. And you ask the question, well, is it working, and do you feel better? And a lot of times the answer is not really. I don't know, maybe.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then they come into the world of integrative practice, and we start doing things like nutraceuticals and dietary changers and um, all these other modalities, plus energy medicine. I've done a deep dive into the energy work, which is one of my passions right now, because
Yeah.
that's the icing on the cake, and so
And
that's
those icings, when you like, it's interesting because I found my little icing on the cake, and man, it's just so eye opening. Like I work with a lot of skin problems being in grooming, and so now I have this microbubbles machine, and it is the icing on the cake for me. And it's just one more tool that has made such a difference, and I mean, it's such a huge difference, and it's just a amazing thing when you realize, wow, where has this been? Where,
yeah.
I can only imagine coming from where you were and what you're doing now and all of the stuff, to have just more and more tools. I'm always looking for more. I'm like, what else is there?
Yeah, well, the beauty of having, an expo or, conference like you're putting on, is that you have a group of these collective, integrative minds coming together.
Yes.
And we all are coming from the same passion, but we do things a little bit differently. And we have our own levels of expertise. And there's pearls from every single person that you're going to interact with. You're not going to get that online.
No.
And for me, I am so excited about doing things live in person.
Me too. Me too.
It's so much, it's personable. You interact with people differently. You get into deeper conversations.
Yeah.
It's more organic.
I
So
think it lasts longer too. Like I could Google and then I turn my stuff off, and then 5 minutes later it might be gone. But when you spend this time, the first one I ever went to was in Chicago, and it was about 6, 7 years ago, and it was put on by Dogs Naturally magazine, and it hit to this day still sits with me, and just the feeling that I got from being at that. That's why I'm doing this. I owe a lot of this to Dogs Naturally magazine for putting on the events that they were putting on back then,
yeah,
because it made me realize how important it was for me to figure out how I could do something like this in Southern California, because it can be hard for people to fly all over the country. And there's another one that goes on in New York. And so I thought, okay, we'll be here. And then putting you guys together was just, I can't express how like all of these minds coming together and collaborating. Like we went to dinner, I remember, and just talking about it and communicating, and it was just so powerful. It was just so, so powerful. And the energy that was in that room, do you remember?
oh
I mean,
yeah,
the energy that was in that room was amazing. It was,
it's amazing. And
yeah,
we learn from each other all
yeah,
the time, and I learn from my clients all the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
We everyone can't know everything.
right,
And
right.
if you just, I always tell my clients that if your animal in my hands is not getting better, it's I need to look at what I'm doing. I need to reevaluate what I'm doing, my techniques, my point prescriptions, my herbs, because it's not like your dog can't heal. There's a hiccup somewhere,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's usually between the doctor and the client, and then the dog's in the middle or the cat's in the middle, and you have to just reset it and say, okay, it was working and now it's not. What happened? Let's reevaluate and not be so stuck in the dogma of, oh, this is what I learned and this is what I know, and I can't be wrong. We need to be a little bit more humble about how we facilitate the healing process. Because as veterinarians or doctors don't fix anything. The patient heals, and the body will heal. It knows exactly how to do it. We just have to help facilitate that process, and
That's
through all
such
of
a
these mechanisms.
see, such a great way to say it, because that's part of the problem. When there isn't healing, the vet takes on the responsibility as if the vet is somehow a bad person for that. But the way that you look at it is, I'm doing something wrong, because it's such a good point. The body knows how to heal itself. If we're not feeding it correctly, if we're not keeping the stress down, if we're not doing all of these things, then the body can't heal. But I love that you're willing to. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, is arrogance in all like walks of everything, lawyers, doctors, vets, all of them. arrogance can just block, right? And then
Yeah.
you don't, then there just can't be any healing. So so welcome. Actually, Jay Kennedy is on here. Jay is one of the two crazy cat ladies. She's also going
Oh,
to be speaking at the Thriving Pet Expo. So it's going to be so great. This group of people, I get chills when I think about what we're going to be doing this year, because we're going to be doing so much to help get more, more people. The more that we can, it's a movement is how I feel
it's
about
a
it. Like,
movement.
this isn't, hey, come out and hang out with us and eat lunch and learn. It's a movement I want people to be a part of. It's
Yeah,
not about your pet. And I know that sounds crazy because you're thinking, I'm going to spend all this money, I want it to be about my pet, and it is,
it
but
is.
it's so much bigger than that. If
Right, right.
we
It's
can,
it's it's the information that you take home. It's the contacts that you make. It's you after you come to this conference, now you're sitting at the dog park next to somebody and they're sharing a story.
yeah,
You should, oh my God, I just heard Dr. Barry Sands talk about blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
And this is what you could do, these little pearls and you spread the word and
yeah,
they're going to say, wow, who's that? Or Dr. Odette Suter or Katie Kangas or, all the amazing people that are on the lineup. We can be found, through our websites and other venues. And, the more people start talking about the possibilities of wellness, the more it's going to, like wildfire, spread, because I can't tell you how many people have no idea that there is another way. And that's probably the saddest thing I ever hear is that, well, we've tried everything and there's nothing else to do.
yeah,
I could think of at least 10 or 20 more things that could have happened
yeah,
before that statement was made.
yeah.
Um, and it's just sad that people don't know that. And at least if the clients are educated, then they can go back to their beloved regular veterinarians and say, hey, I heard this, and what do you think about that? And integrative, I can't speak for everybody, but as an integrative veterinarian who's passionate about overall wellness, I will always speak to everybody or anybody who's interested for a conversation about wellness, whether it's a colleague, a professor, a doctor, a researcher, a friend, family, it doesn't matter. Just have the conversation. And the more veterinarians that are become open and hear it from the clients, it's the client demand that's going to feed their desire to reach out and learn something.
I love when you say, like, the idea that they there's wellness out there, like what that is, like so many people give up and say, oh well, dogs just get sick, they just have these problems, they just
Mhm.
only live to be 12 years old. The idea that there is a better way and a better life. I mean, so many animals, unfortunately, I see far more sick animals than I see, and that's all how you define sick. So sometimes people think just because their dog is walking and eating and drinking that he's healthy. We had a case just 2 days ago. If I hope I don't start crying because this one really bothers me, but she felt like she was doing everything, and I know that she loved her dog so very much, but there was so much more that could have been done. And
Yeah,
before I could reach her, even though we had many conversations, but before I could reach her, before that seed could blossom, she put him to sleep the other day. And
yeah,
it's heartbreaking to me because I know there was so much more. There was so much more that could have been done. And I just don't think she really wrapped her head around the idea that it was a possible thing, that there was life without all of the sickness that he dealt with. And so,
right. And that being said, Carrie, there is, the human element in the relationship is something that I feel is never addressed, because that's a whole other thing in itself.
absolutely, absolutely,
That's a whole psychological,
sure,
um, endeavor to deal with that, because these people, they have their lives, they have their own personal problems and issues and things that they're dealing with, and plus they have their animal, and maybe they're hearing the same narrative from their veterinarian over and over again, so it becomes their belief systems. It's like, oh yeah,
exactly,
your cat vomits every day for its life. That's what cats do. It's just normal. Your cat's
right.
fine, right?
Right.
Until he's not, right? So that's not normal, but they believe it to be true, and they live their lives around that particular belief. And so when it gets worse, they feel like, okay, well, it's just over, you know, it's
Yeah.
just nothing else to do because that was normal. And now he's really sick and I can't deal with it, or I can't fathom another solution, or there's a lot that goes into it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think some of it, there's a level of compassion that just, you know, we kind of have to have as it's at least as also as an emergency veterinarian, because I have so much that comes in such a serious crisis. And some people, it boils down to finances, you know, that they just can't do it, or they just can't, they don't have the bandwidth, the emotional bandwidth to handle it. And
Yeah.
some people will just wish it would never happen and would go away,
Yeah.
you know. So there's a lot of different levels and ways of,
The psychological part of it plays such a and it's really hard for outside, like I'm sure for vets. I know for me sometimes it's really hard for me to see it and know that there's something far deeper than I could ever address about the dog. I did a podcast a while back on Munchausen's by proxy in the animal world because I knew that there was so much psychological stuff that was, and it was stressful for me as well because I'm like, I'm trying to help this dog, but I've got this block because there's stuff. I'm not a psychiatrist and I don't even work with people, so I couldn't even begin to. So I had to step back and realize that that plays a huge role. The
yeah,
psychological, the lifestyle, like you're talking about, the lifestyle. And most people don't get dogs thinking that they're going to be this sick and need to go to the vet every month and spend all of this money. And so, and then you have the dynamics within the family, right? You could have one person, husband or wife that is wanting to do all that. And then it can cause that friction where the other one isn't as attached, like my little precious Ansel. My husband's not quite as attached to my little problem child as I am. But he's got his 4 cats, so whatever. So we have our own little battle. I got him real quick. I got him a shirt that says, who I never thought I would grow up to be a sexy cat dad, but here I am. And then it has like all 4 of his cats on it. And I made him wear it yesterday. Like, you have to wear this for Father's Day. But anyway, so Dr. Sands does have this incredible book that Lori just put up for you guys, The Stupid Things My Human Does. I cannot tell you. Please read this book. There's some good stuff in there. There's some really good stuff. Can you share one of those with us? One of the stories?
oh, well, the book it's a very short book. It's written by my cat, Senior Queso, he's the narrator because he used to live in the emergency room as a blood donor, and he needed to share his what he saw of all these animals coming in and just the dumb things that are happening.
Yeah.
I mean, there are serious things, and then there are just absolutely just silly things
What the heck? Yeah.
that we do. Well, I mean, there's one. Uh, there's a story named, it's the title is called Lily, and it's about this beautiful Bengal cat that the boyfriend, uh, it was their anniversary, and the boyfriend got mom this big beautiful bouquet of lilies and put it in the house. And then the cat went in and put its face on the flowers and started loving on them and sniffing them and chewing on the leaves. Lilies are highly toxic. Not all lilies, but the large percentage of the species are very toxic to cats. It causes them to go into kidney failure. And so the cat, they rushed the cat in to be hospitalized, and it was in the hospital for 3 days. And it survived and it was fine. And the moral of, there's always a little moral of the story.
Right.
The end of the story. I'm not going to, disclose those, but like, don't give your beloved lilies, just know that lilies are toxic. So if people read my book, I still see lilies coming in, eating lilies. And I'm like, if everyone read my book, you'd never have another lily case.
Never have a lily. So lilies are my favorite flower. My husband and I have been married 26 years, and he used to always buy me lilies forever. He would buy me lilies for everything. And now he has these four cats now. And one day he came home with lilies, and I was like, we can't have lilies. And so now we have to be very cat friendly flowers. So I gave up my lilies but now I have roses and
Yeah,
cat
roses are
friendly. Yeah.
perfect.
Now I have cat friendly flowers, which is
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. I don't get to smell the lilies anymore, but yeah, the things that people, do, and oh God, so
Yeah.
I have the book. I read it a long time ago, so it's been a while because I met Dr. Sands, God, like 6 years ago, 7 years, six. So it's been a while, and then I remember you gave me a book, and I came home and I was like glued to it because if I ever was going to be a veterinarian, I would be you. I would want to be, integrative emergency room vet because
Yeah.
I thrive in emergency situations. That's where I am the calmest. It's where I feel the most like I can take control over those situations. But I would also want to be able to later know that, hey, maybe we don't need to give all these antibiotics and we need to think about the future. Because so many times emergency room veterinarians just give you this whole, I have a friend who just went to the emergency room. I wish he would have called me first, but he spent $300 on medication for a dog that had a little bit of diarrhea.
Wow.
And he went home with $300 worth of stuff. He didn't give it. He said he gave it for a day, and then he thought, "Why am I doing all this? Like, what?
Wow.
What? The dog's fine. Why am I giving all this medication for weeks on end?" So,
Yeah.
but I would so be that. I would want to be an integrative emergency room vet. That's why I wanted to read all the stories from Queso because I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yes.
so what out like what do you think aside from like being at the pet expo, those kind of things, what would you hope like coming into a vet hospital that people would be prepared for? I know for me sometimes I would ask questions back when I was at the regular vet and they just don't know the answers to them. Is there anything that people can prepare themselves better for when going into an emergency room that would help you guys?
Well, it would be nice well, coming into the ER, we don't know the history on these animals, and so it's also sometimes it's a extremely stressful moment, so people can't gather information about the history of their pet readily enough. And so for me, what's the best that comes in is like if you've gone to your vet before, like in the last week or two, and they did blood work or they had x-rays or they gave you medications, bring it with you. Bring the copies of your records with
Yeah,
you. Your blood work, you can't, the x-rays you can't unless they give you like a little CD disc.
right, right.
Um, but some people I've seen taking pictures of them on their phones, and then I could see them. Um, that is really, really helpful because I can't tell you how many people will say, "Oh, I just went to my vet yesterday or 2 days ago and he did blood work, but now the dog is super sick and I have to do the blood work again because I don't have the results."
Right.
So it ends up being more that you're spending more money. So if you had some evidence of what happened,
Yeah.
the records, just get copies of your records, even though if your vet doesn't give them to you normally, just collect them. Just say, "Hey, can I get a copy?" And they
Wonderful.
will. They should give you the copy of the records and the blood work and whatever diagnostics that they did. It's
Yeah.
really helpful. Um,
Yeah. More money, more time too, right? Like if it does end up being something serious, now you're spending more time waiting for those results to figure out what you're going to be doing. So, and a lot of time, I mean, it seems so trivial, kind of like, of course I would bring my records, but you'd be surprised how many people they don't.
no, nobody brings their records. Very, very few people bring their records. Very
Oh
few.
my God.
Also, it's also another thing that's kind of helpful is if your animal's doing something weird, film it, videotape the moment.
Yep.
And so then, because you're trying to describe it in your own sort of personal bias of what you think is happening.
Yep.
And I could tell you 90% of the time it's completely wrong. What they're describing is not at all what because
Yeah.
they're interpreting what's happening without just describing it.
Yeah.
And in the interpretation, I had this one lady who said that her dog was coughing, was vomiting up. She fed the dog some pizza, and he was vomiting up pizza. He was vomiting up the sauce. The dog didn't look very good, and I was like, the dog doesn't. I says, is he coughing because he sounds like he's congested? And she's like, no, 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 he's vomiting. I saw it happen. So we admit the dog to the hospital because he was really sick, and I witnessed the event. The dog was coughing up blood, and it was, and that's bad. It's really
Wow.
bad when you start doing that, and so that changed, my treatment plan. It changed my therapeutics. So if
Coughing up
she would have,
pizza.
yeah, well, she thought he ate the sauce and he vomited up the sauce and it was all red, but what he was doing was coughing up
Coughing
blood.
blood.
And
Actual blood.
it was coughing and not vomiting, which
Oh,
are two very different
right.
mechanisms. So if she filmed it, I would have seen it. It's like, oh yeah, no, your dog is coughing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
that's,
agree with you. Videos, pictures, I've so many times. I mean, just being on Saving Pets, anybody that's on here will know. If you know me as one of the moderators, I always am like, do you have a video? Do you have a picture? I mean, I'm not going to diagnose anyway. I'm not a vet, but it helps us. We have a lot of vets that are moderators on Saving Pets too. So sometimes we will kind of pass those over to them and then kind of make a determination there. But those videos are amazing, amazing. I've had people think their dog's having a seizure, and I'm like, it doesn't really look. They're just paranoid that everything is a seizure now because so many dogs are having seizures. So they hear that their neighbors and the kids down the street say their everybody's having seizures. And so
right.
now when the dog does this weird twitch thing because he got bit by a flea or an anal gland problem, that one I've actually seen, when they get those weird anal gland problems and they turn and they bite and they kind of act
Hmm.
weird. I had somebody tell me that she thought that was a seizure. And so I
Right.
said, well, take a video of it. And then I looked at it and I was like, I think your dog has an anal gland problem, actually. Those are huge differences, right? And so we ended
Yeah.
up doing his anal glands, and it ended up, I don't know, that was just recently. So I haven't heard if he was, but from what I see, it didn't look like a seizure. But yeah, videos are good. All of that, anything that can help the emergency room vets faster and not have to do extra work and extra blood work. Because that's one thing I think that pet parents wish could happen. And I wish too. I wish vets could treat our dogs without diagnostics. They're expensive, but you can't.
No,
You
no.
can't just go, okay, well, let's just throw something at it without the diagnostics.
No, and you know what? I'm not a proponent of that at all,
Yeah,
because what happens is that you end up spending more money and more time by just willy-nilly throwing stuff out, say, well, let's see if this works, let's see if this works.
right.
And if you just spend the money on the diagnostics, you will find out what is wrong, and then you can appropriately treat it.
Yeah.
And you always end up saving money in the long run if you do that.
Yeah. That's
Like
the best
honestly,
way to look at it. And when I say I wish it could, I just meant in a perfect world that we could just all, close our eyes and know exactly what was wrong with the animal. I don't want anyone to
yeah.
do treatment without diagnostics ever. Um,
And that's where you get into that realm of like that medical medium, that energetic, intuitive tapping in sort
yeah.
of work,
Yeah.
which I do a lot of. I have this suspicion of what I'm feeling, so I have a lot of things that I will use in my personal toolbox. And my training in energy medicine, I recently got certified as a master practitioner of shamanic energy medicine.
Wow.
Yeah, and for humans and
Mhm.
for humans. So certified shaman to do energy healing, and so obviously it's not just for humans. I use it on animals and
I feel like it would work better with animals. I don't know because I'm not familiar with it, but I just feel like animals would be more open to that.
oh yeah, animals are really easy to treat
Yeah, that's what I
energetically
feel like. They would be
because
so
they're
much
open.
easier to treat.
Yeah, well, the people that come and seek out energy healers, are ready. They
Yeah,
want that. So once you're open and ready for the experience, then the healing will happen.
yeah.
So that's a
I, I
whole
s-
other level.
I just say that because this was a few years back. I went somewhere and I was having some back issues, and the masseuse that was there said she could do some energy stuff, and I didn't even like really know. And I was kind of, to be honest, I was kind of not thrown into it. Like she didn't put a gun to my head or anything, but I was like, oh, sure, go ahead. I wasn't ready. And the whole time she was doing it, I was like, I knew this is never going to work because I'm blocking it. Like I
Right.
believe it, but I could feel that my energy was like, what is she doing now? Like I was kind of, I had this block that was going on. I needed to set myself up for it. I needed to be ready for it. Um,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and
for
someday I'm
sure.
going to get back. I want to try it. I do, but I want to be ready for it and open to it and not just like went in for a regular massage and now I'm,
Right. Right. No,
oh, okay.
you're absolutely right. You can't, it's a two-way communication.
Yeah.
You have to have the healer needs permission, from the person who's they're healing, because
Yeah.
it's a conversation. It's, when you're doing it one-sided, it's just like having a one-sided conversation and the person's just not listening to you.
Yeah. No, that's how I felt the whole time because I knew in my head I was like she would put her hands and just hold them there and then I just got awkward and weird and it was just an awkward thing for me. But then I came home and I started reading about it and I was really paying closer attention to it and kind of trying to learn about it and I'm interested in it. I
Yeah.
really, really am. So it was just funny because I was like, oh, this poor girl's wasting her time because I know I'm blocking it because I feel weird right now. But that's why I think animals, because they don't have that weirdness, right? Like animals aren't like, my friends are going to think I'm weird. They don't, they don't have all that.
I mean, they do have their own anxieties, and they have their stuff that's coming in from the owners, their
Yeah.
energies. I think sound therapy is actually a really cool modality of healing,
Huh.
because it's ambient, and you'll feel it regardless of what you believe in, honestly. You have a certain tone or a frequency that's resonating, and it'll pick up the resonance frequencies within your system that is not in alignment, and they'll amplify or correct or change the dissonance of that. It's like listening to a really cool song on the radio. When your favorite song comes on, you feel different. Your
Right.
body starts to move in a different way, like without you even knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you have some horrible sound that, some, I don't know, heavy metal, if you don't like it and you're listening to it, you're like, it's not doing it for me.
Yeah. Get it out.
It's
I,
actually making me feel really like icky.
I always, when people think that like energy, like they're so against it, I think if you don't believe in energy, just walk into a room of two people fighting. No one says a word, right? Because when you walk in, it's silent. That is like thick, hardcore energy, right? And you
Yeah,
can feel it. You walk in and you're like, oh God, what did I just walk into? And nobody's even said a word.
you're
It's
right.
just that
I think when people say, I don't know I'm not really sure what that means when people say I don't believe in energy. I just think they just don't understand
yeah.
the context of where it's coming from. I
Yeah.
had I tried to get a low level light infrared laser into my practice for 15 years.
Wow.
And the medical director at the time, she was like, well, there's no double blinded placebo controlled study to prove that these lasers work. Like, what is it even doing?
Yeah.
It's light. Like, how does light affect anything? I was like, well, do you go outside when the sun is shining, and does your skin change color? Like, do you get a sunburn, or do you feel heat?
Yeah.
Because that's light.
I,
That's the electromagnetic frequencies that are coming in. But that's all of it that's coming in. And these lasers are very particular for a frequency and a wavelength. And so you can't deny light therapy if you believe in the sun,
sure.
because it's the same thing in a different way. So
Yeah.
I think they just don't understand when people
I
say
think
things
they
like
don't understand either. And I mean, I don't even fully understand all of it. I have some lights that I bought I just wanted to see what it was all about. And I'm learning a little bit about it because I think it's interesting. So, and I started using red light therapy for my back. And it's so weird. I don't know if other people do this, but when you learn something and you want to try it, but you're still maybe a little skeptical, like, what is this weird thing? And I do it anyway. And then here's where the problem is. Then my back starts to feel better and it can't be that, right? Then I'm like, oh, it must be because I did this or I did that. And I still have that blockage, right? Even though I was using it, I was using the red light. I lay on it. And my husband laughs because the whole room turns red. But
Yeah.
I lay on it and then my back started feeling better. And then I'm like, oh, it was probably going to feel better without the light. Like I do that. It's not good.
Yeah. I also think though it's just the education around it too, because honestly, I feel like if we when we were young and in school, instead of learning about, Thomas Edison and his ways that he made light bulbs, if we were taught about Nikola Tesla and his ways that he manipulated energy and built those the technology around his beliefs and his studies, we would think differently about energy medicine. We would know more things. We would learn more quantum theories and more physics around what these energies are doing and how they interact.
Yeah.
But we haven't. I mean, that's one of the lectures that I'm going to be giving, as well as a deep dive into quantum biology, and and how what that means, and try to break it down in a simple way that we can all understand it. Because if I can understand it, I feel like a lot of people can understand it.
That's what is so great about your talk last year. And if you guys haven't listened to Dr. Sands do one of her talks, anyone can, like, it can get pretty intense, but she has a way of making you not feel, for lack of a better word, stupid. Because it can get pretty deep, and you could think, oh my God, I'm never going to understand what this person is saying. This is way over my head. I just want to help my animal. But it comes down, it starts to funnel down into where it's like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. This makes so much sense. I can use this information to help my animal. That's what I love about somebody as brilliant as you, who can be brilliant enough and understand it enough to be able to communicate it to someone who isn't got their face in that book, learning and educating it. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, one of my goals for myself is always to, whatever I'm learning, is to be able to explain it to a 5-year-old child.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
And then just, keep it that, because everything really is very simple. We make it complex.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of these people who just like to, I mean, I've listened to physicists speak, and I don't know what they're saying. I'm like, why can't you just make it simple?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they can't, because their minds just work in a very, a certain way, especially when it's mathematics.
Yeah.
Listening to someone who only does mathematics is really boring, at least for me, because that's not my mind.
Right.
I don't know how that translates into the here and now and tangible stuff. Like, okay, well, that's great, but what does that mean for me?
How do I make it work? How does this work? Yeah, that's what is so great about when Dr. Sands is speaking, at all of her events. Are you speaking at the AHVMA also?
Yeah.
Yeah, the AHVMA is in San Diego this year too. So, and I can't wait, because my only bummer about the expo is that because Lori's behind the scenes here, and we're trying to put it all together. I didn't get a good chance to just sit down and go, I just want to listen. I just want to listen, and I want to learn. So I'm excited. I'm going to get to go to the AHVMA, because I that was my only downside, is I was so excited to listen to you guys. Each one of you last year just gave the most amazing talks. And here I am. I got 10 minutes of this one and 5 minutes of this one. And then, and I don't even know if Lori was able to hear anything. That poor girl was running around everywhere, making sure mics and things and all the stuff is going. So I'm really excited that this year I have a little bit more help this year too. So I'm like, I am going to get to listen to some more stuff. And it's a 2-day, so I don't know if 2 days is going to make it more work for me. I feel like we have a little bit more time, so it's not as rushed, like hurry up, we have to get all of these speakers in the same day. And so I'm hoping that's going to make it a little bit more.
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be organic, and it's going to be amazing. And I think the people that are going to show up, I mean, like you said, that the energy in the room, and the more people that come, and it's priceless. It truly is priceless. The information that you get, and the experience, and the exposure to the people that are speaking, to the joy, the laughter, the community. I mean, it truly is a priceless experience. I thought last year's expo was amazing, so much fun.
Yeah.
It was probably the best a pet expo that I have been to, because your attention to detail was amazing. You know,
That's so great.
the quality of the food, the snacks, the tables, the ambiance, the accessibility. I mean, it was really, I've been to a lot of conferences, and this was one of the tops.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Especially because it was our first one. Lori really helped drive it. I know for us what was really big, and it still is this year, is that health is right. If you're not healthy, your pet's not healthy. That's why we made sure that the food that was there, the same menu is going to be there this year. We've got a few add-ons, so I'm excited. um, I will say this, and I can't help it, but I am having a very special cake made for us. My friend is a cake designer, and she's creating a dog and cat cake, and not just like little dog and cats on it. Like, she's creating this beautiful wedding size cake
Yeah.
of a full size dog and a full size cat. So that's about our only like real junk food that's going to be there. So I mean, I think we have some cookies and stuff, but to me it meant like wellness is everywhere. It's not just about making sure your pet is healthy. It's also about, taking a check in on yourself, right? The stress level that you're under, the food that you're eating, how you're feeling, because like you talked about last year, those can transfer.
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they
Yeah.
do. And we're at a pivotal time in our world, honestly, more so than even last year, where the choices that we make are that much more important.
Yes.
And if we have the correct information to make these choices, we can make better choices.
Yeah.
And I think this is the way it's going to be. We need to start taking ownership of our own health, and our animals' health. So because our systems are not okay, the
Yeah.
medical systems aren't okay. Everything is crumbling and changing, and the reliance upon our wellness is really going to start taking a turn of introspection of how we're like, inner physicians, and thinking about what's wrong and doing other things, lifestyle changes.
Yep.
So, and this is just a small piece to help get everybody on that
Yeah.
track.
Yeah, it is. And it's just going to be so exciting. And I just get so excited every time I talk about it. I can't believe it's coming up. Like, it's here. It's like, we're in the phase, we're in the ticket selling phase, which is the like big thing. Once that started, once those got launched, I was like, oh my God, we're in it now. There's no
Yeah,
going back now. We're in it. So I get excited, but I'm just so blessed to have you guys be part of this team, because it's just such a fabulous team.
yeah,
We've got Billy Hookman this year, and last year he was supposed to be here, but unfortunately he had a death of the family. So he's going to be back in on our team this year. So it's just such a fabulous group of people, and I'm excited. I'm excited for all of you guys who are going to be there to be part of this movement. I will continue to call it a movement, because we can't just idly sit back and hope that somebody else is going to share this knowledge and help. And that's why we brought in the two crazy cat ladies, because they're going to be doing some very special stuff to help you, so that when you take this information, when you learn this information, you don't just go home and go, now what? We're going to teach you how to communicate with your conventional veterinarians to help facilitate what you need to do. And the information that Dr. Sands and the other vets and the other experts are going to be bringing to you are going to be invaluable. And so I'm just thank you for being here tonight. It's we're on the 6 o'clock, and I know we're keeping you late. So I want to make sure that we are respectful of your time. And
yeah. There's a comment I just read from Beth. If I can take a quick
yes, please
moment
do.
to
I didn't
respond.
see it. I'm sorry.
She wrote, "Feeding healthy human or pet is expensive."
Oh, yeah.
And I have, yes, right. So the answer to that is yes. But the question, what also is true, is that in the span of in your health span or your lifespan, you're going to spend money either upfront in the preventative aspect, or on the back end of disease. You're going to spend the money, and I could guarantee you that you're going to spend a lot more money when it comes to the disease part. And when you come into the ER, like for instance, you have an animal that comes in with vomiting and bloody diarrhea because they're on a very highly processed kibble food, and they're because it's a big dog and they don't want to feed better foods. So now the dog has severe gastroenteritis, and is now needing to be hospitalized because he's extremely sick. This dog is going to be in the hospital for maybe 2, 3 days, maybe two. And the price you're going to spend in your average ER is going to be about $6,000 to $8,000 for damage control on a dog in 3 days. So you take that $6,000 to $8,000 and you translate it into how much food can I buy my dog for that same amount of money over what course of time? And you're probably going to be able to feed that dog for 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're going to spend the money. It's
Yeah.
just shifting the mindset of how and when and the value that you put upon it. So, and it always feels better to spend money up front in wellness and health span, and then versus taking that money and basically just flushing it down the toilet for 3 days to save the life, not because the life was not, worth it to save, but that's just damage control. And you've done nothing except bring your dog back to where he was 3 days earlier.
Yeah. You know what
Does that
I
make
find
sense?
interesting is because she's not right. I mean, it is hard, and financially, it can be very expensive. Like you said, yes, it is. It is expensive.
And
Um,
there's ways to
there are
make
ways.
it work. There's so much variables, and like if you have to feed kibble, give 2, 3 meals a week of fresh food. Like it doesn't take a lot to make a big change, in the health and well-being. So there's lots of different levels and ways we can help.
I keep seeing is people. I hear it a lot on Saving Pets where people are feeding these kibbles and these foods, and then they're spending so much money on the supplements and the flea and tick medications and the
Yeah.
heartworm medications and the dewormers and like all this stuff, and I'm like, gosh, if you took all that away, the money could be just spent on your I don't think I spend on my dogs more than people who are feeding kibble and supplements, and because my dogs don't get flea and tick medications and heartworm medications and all of that other stuff, so it just all goes into their diet, their food, their
Right.
wellness, as you say. Like, it just goes into their wellness.
Right.
And I had clients where they're like, God, if I got rid of this and I got rid of that and I got rid of this and now I don't need that supplement anymore, and suddenly they're like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
actually saving money. So there are, like, to your point, there are ways. Although another thing that bothers me is why it's so expensive, because I try to eat as healthy as I can, and it is so expensive. And it bothers me that in Europe they manage to have cleaner, better food that isn't, like, they don't even have organic food versus non-organic food, but we do. So I have to pay more for organic, and so that's just a whole nother soapbox I could take you down.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, to your point, Beth, it is expensive. I wish it wasn't, but to Dr. Sand's point, it is cheaper than an $8,000 problem at the ER.
Yeah.
4 years of it. We have animals that are chronic, right? It's the whole life, their whole life, and
It's
so
just, it really is. It's just a mindset shift, a decision that you want to be healthy, and then you can just take the steps within your means, and you'll find it'll work. You may start giving up something else and funneling that money into this.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
the money that you spent on your doctor's visits and your medications, you're now spending, doing yoga and massages. It just,
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so all right, well, we are going to let Dr. Sands go. Dr. Sands, thank you so very much for being
you're
here,
welcome,
talking about the
Melissa.
expo and just being a part of the expo. It's so
So
important.
excited. It's gonna be so much
Yeah,
fun.
it's coming up, and it's going to be beautiful here that time of year. Everything about it is great. So, all right, guys, I'm glad you guys got a chance on Saving Pets to meet Dr. Sands. I talk about her often, and I refer people to her as often as I can. You can also reach Dr. Sands. She does do consultations. So, and don't forget, she's the 2022 Holistic Veterinarian of the Year. So when you guys are asking me for a holistic veterinarian, I brought you one here in person, right here on your screen. So I will see you guys at the Thriving Pet Expo. Lori, thank you so much for being here. All of you guys for your great questions and being part of this. Remember, you're going to be part of a movement. When you're part of Thriving Pet Expo, you are part of a movement. So speak with your conventional veterinarians. Don't be afraid to have the conversation with them. And when you come to the Thriving Expo, we're going to give you some tips and tricks on that. So, All right, everybody. Dr. Sands, thank you so much, as always, for just being so amazing.
You're welcome, Carrie. Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. All right, you guys, have a wonderful evening. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.